Welcome to Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I have come here to answer the question, not am I scared of cable cars, but to answer the question, is it cheaper to come to Sarajevo and have a good weekend than it is to go to London and have a good weekend?
In this budget-conscious episode of Globetrot Colin, a woman is accosted by pigeons, and I do my best to try not to be scared of cable cars. Bosnia and Herzegovina is highly accessible from the UK, with direct flights from London Luton taking just over 2 hours. Many people will only think of Bosnia and Herzegovina as a country that was at war in the 1990s and that broke away from the former Yugoslavia. I'm here to tell you that it's so much more than that. It is where East meets West. There's a clashing of cultures, and Sarajevo, the capital city, is known as the Jerusalem of the West.
Good morning and welcome to Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina, one of the Balkan countries, and not just famous for the Bosnian War back in 1992 to 1996, but also for being the place which triggered the start of World War I. Sarajevo is where Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in 1914, triggering the start of the deadly First World War. Let's go and explore the city. The first thing to note is that they have a wonderful river running through the centre of the city. This is called the Miljacka River, flowing all the way down from the mountains up there, down through the heart of the city, and I'm going to be following that today as I walk down and see what the sights and sounds of Sarajevo have to offer. And one of the first things I've noticed as I've walked down the Miljacka River are these pretty cool sculptures that have been made out of wire and are quite a decorative way to cover up the fact that there are wires hanging across the river. So quite like that. We've got someone flying there, somebody on a unicycle or bike of some sort, and then here a penny farthing. So quite a nice way to decorate that. Now, Sarajevo is known as one of the cultural capitals of Europe and actually often referred to as the Jerusalem of the West. And the reason for that is it's because where the West meets the East, you will find mosques, synagogues, churches, and a real clash of cultures here in Sarajevo. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out, not only in the architecture, but also in the cuisine as we look through the city. Just taking one of the many bridges that cross the Miljacka River here. First of all, to get a nice picture with I Love Sarajevo, but also because of the spectacular view back down the river here and towards the mountains. Absolutely beautiful. It is a bit smoggy and misty this morning, so it's a shame really because the mountains aren't quite as obvious as they would be otherwise, but so far, very impressed. Looks great. Now, something unfortunately we'll see a lot whilst we're looking around Sarajevo is evidence of the Bosnian War, which began in 1992 and ran through to 95 and erupted following the breakup of Yugoslavia when Bosnia and Herzegovina declared independence. And it was primarily because there were Bosniaks, Serbs and Croats who had a different vision of the future for Sarajevo, and therefore conflict erupted and lasted for 3-4 years, including sniper attacks, shellings, etc. And then in 1995 a US act was drafted called the Dayton Act, which brought an end to the conflict. Now, like most places, Sarajevo just looks so much better in the sunshine, and now the sunshine's decided to come out, we can get a real feel for the different types of architecture. You've got Yugoslav architecture here on the left-hand side, but over the other side of the river, we have this, the Academy of Fine Arts, part of the University of Sarajevo, in stunning Austro-Hungarian architecture style. What a wonderful building. Now, this bridge going across the Miljacka River from where I'm standing now to the Academy of Fine Arts, the University of Sarajevo, was actually an idea and concept by some of the students that worked within the Academy of the Fine Arts there. So in 2012 this bridge was opened, and the design itself was part of a project made by students based in the university. Pretty incredible stuff. Now, you may wonder why I've just stopped to film a tram here, but actually Sarajevo can boast being the first European city to have an electric tramway in the whole of Europe. Way back in 1885, these trams would have roamed the streets using electric power during the Austro-Hungarian reign. Now they're obviously a lot more modernised, but the city does have a lot of them, and I can tell you that they're pretty powerful because I can feel them when I'm in bed at night going past the building that I'm in, shaking me to sleep. There you go, there's an example of an earlier one. Now I don't think that would have gone back to the 1880s, but a lot older. Now just over the road here, and I'm sorry for the traffic noise, you'll see the Bosnian flag flying, which has 3 colours on, blue as the background, yellow as a triangle, and then 7 full stars and 2 half stars. And the flag represents blue being their commitment, Bosnia and Herzegovina, to join the EU, yellow being the shape of the country on the map, which is essentially a isosceles triangle, and then the 7 stars, which are unity towards the EU and their continued progression towards peace. Well, that image there quite well represents what I think of Sarajevo so far. You've got this beautiful bridge called the Latin Bridge. You have a minaret in the background of a mosque. You have Austro-Hungarian architecture. On this side, you've got Yugoslav architecture, and then up in the very distance there, up on top of the hill, is a fortress. So here we go then, a little cheesy photo in front of the Latin Bridge, which was first mentioned actually in a document way back in 1541. So it's potentially been around for 700 years, but its current form as we see it today has been since 1798, when it was built by funds given by the merchant Abdullah Briga. So I've read that this is one of the most attractive sites in Sarajevo, so let's take a walk across and have a look at the beautiful stonework, but then also the view back down the river, and we can see castle on the top up there, and also up there the fort, which I'll probably go to at some point, and then also a view back this way down the river. Very nice. So here on the ground we've got some footmarks or footsteps, which shows that on this place in the 28th of June 1914, Gavrilo Princip assassinated the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Franz Ferdinand, and his wife Sophia. So if I put my feet where he was, this is exactly what started the First World War. And before I get assassinated, I'm going to move on. Some really interesting black and white images on the wall there, including one of them in a car here. So Franz Ferdinand and his wife being driven around Sarajevo. And then just to think that just there where those steps are, he was stood whilst he was assassinated back on the 28th of June in 1914, leading to the start of the First World War, an irreparable movement and change for Europe and the rest of the world. Quite remarkable to think that that piece of history has stood right here. Alright, so continuing my adventure on foot through the streets of Sarajevo, and I've now come into the old town. And actually, if I get my beak out of the way, you can probably see that the streets have become narrower and it looks a little bit more oldie-worldy, which you would expect with it being an old town. And I am heading to a marketplace which, and I need to get my phone for this, is called Bashkarsia, and it's been recommended to me as somewhere to go, vibrant, thriving, full of culture. So let's go and have a look at it. But so far so good, and actually I would say that the old town is already my favourite part of the city. It's beautiful, it's different, and it's quiet, and I like that. So let's go explore some more. So this is very obviously a tourist hotspot, as there are a lot of places to come and eat and drink, and that's one thing I've noticed in Sarajevo actually, is that there are a lot of places to come and eat and drink, which is great. Given that you're only 2 hours 20 minutes from the UK, I can't recommend coming here enough. It is wonderful. I'm guessing these are traditional clothes. But there's someone in there playing the piano. Very nice. Well, I think I've arrived where I was intending to come, which is the marketplace. Looks amazing. Looks quite Middle Eastern actually. I wouldn't be surprised if I'd seen this in, say, Tunisia or Egypt or Morocco or somewhere like that, North Africa. So there seems to be quite a lot of influence from Islamic architecture and design, as you can see here with these lanterns and the carpets and etc. So yeah, this is really pleasant to walk around. Well, I've walked out into a very busy square right in the shadow of one of Sarajevo's many mosques. Beautiful mosque actually, in that white stone there. But as you see as I pan around, It's thriving around here. Edin Dzeko, one of Bosnia's best footballers for probably the last 15 years actually. This area is lovely. I cannot recommend it enough for you. If you come to Sarajevo, spend a little bit of time walking around the old town and the marketplace. I'm here now with, yet again, as I seem to always do in many countries, with about 1 million pigeons. There are a lot of pigeons in the centre of the old town here in Sarajevo. But if you have a look back round, you see the mosque in the background. If I told you I was in Turkey, I think you'd probably believe it. Well, I certainly would believe it anyway. This is not what I was expecting necessarily when I came here to Sarajevo, but now that I've learned that there's a real influence from Muslim culture, particularly based on the Ottoman Empire time. So this gentleman here is selling seeds that you can then feed to the pigeons, which is probably why there's 1,000,001 of them here. And there's an absolute feast going on over here. I didn't think I'd be filming pigeons yet again on my travels, but here we are. In the old town of Sarajevo. If you are a particular pigeon lover, don't forget to miss this spot because you will be delighted by our feathered friends once again roaming and owning the streets. Excuse me, chaps. Excuse me. Make way. Thank you. That is the name of the place that I've come to, and you can probably see why I struggled to say it. This woman is getting absolutely attacked by pigeons. I think she's now realising that it was probably a bad idea to buy the seeds, given that there were about 1 million around her and she had about 6 on her head. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, this is actually called Pigeon Square. I have just looked at that on the map and it is called Pigeon Square, so somewhere you can easily aim for if you want to see that kind of thing here in Sarajevo. Now you might be able to hear the banging in the background. That is a gentleman who's making one of these plates or bowls. But I've taken one of the side streets off Pigeon Square, you'll be pleased to know, and I found this row of shops here, this parade of shops, perhaps even a bazaar, selling all sorts of metalware, pottery, beautiful colour and decorated items, pretty much as far as the eye can see down this little alleyway, having come from down there. So again, I've said it before, but I massively recommend coming and having a look at the old town. There's a lot to see and do. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, there is something that you probably don't know about me, which is that I spent 6.5 years of my life living in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh. 4 years as a kid, 2.5 years as an adult. And I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in Saudi in the 90s, where you would find parades and shops and bazaars very similar to this, but also being based in Riyadh, able to travel around the region as well. So to Egypt, Tunisia and North Africa, as well as other Gulf states. And so I really appreciate these kinds of pots and artwork because it takes me back to that time in my life where I lived in Saudi Arabia, and I have to say they were some of the happiest times, particularly when I went back as an adult back in 2007. Well, I absolutely love that. The old town is fantastic. It's vibrant, it's full of colours, arts and crafts and culture. I would say so far, based on what I've seen of Sarajevo, it's the heartbeat, it's the place to come for sure. Now, I'm walking out of the old town and heading towards this building up here, the stripy one, with the yellow and terracotta, I suppose you'd say, coloured building, which is the town hall. Well, there you go. Some flowers in the foreground, the town hall in the background, a beautiful view back down the river, minaret in the background. What else do you need? Oh, probably my smile. Hey, well, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Not the car that's coming past. There you go, Sarajevo, right in front of the town hall. What a marvellous building it is.
Whilst doing a lovely little pirouette here in front of the City Hall, which was opened in 1896, I spotted a cable car going up the mountain, and I thought, what better way to get a view of Sarajevo than subjecting myself to half an hour in a little greenhouse going up a hill.
Well, we've only just got going and you've already got a sense of the size of Sarajevo here. Sitting in a valley with the fort just over there, spanning right the way across and into the hazy distance. Where we're heading is all the way up this mountain and then all the way back down. And I'm absolutely not terrified at all. Now for this journey up and down the mountain, I'm very pleased to say that I got this cable car to myself, which is good because I can then honestly tell you what it's like. And so far it's spectacular, as you can see back there out of this rather dirty window, and I'm pleased to say that it is sunny this afternoon, albeit there is a dense smog and haze hanging over Sarajevo, which you can probably see there. But the sun's come out, which is making for a much nicer day. It also means though that I can see the height that I'm at, which isn't massive, but it's enough to make me go, ooh. Well, that is Sarajevo from the sky. Right the way up here on the mountainside on the cable car. We've still got quite a long way to go, right the way to the top of the mountain up that way, but we'll start to have a bit of an obscured view of the city now. So this, I think, is as good as it's going to get in terms of a view until we come down on the other side. And wow is all I can say. What a fabulous view it is back down there. Now, one thing they didn't tell you is you board this cable car ride right the way from down there in Sarajevo city to the top of the mountain is just how hot it is inside this cable car. I mean, I'm effectively sat in a greenhouse, and you can see there is a little bit of an opening at the top, but it is purposefully closed off to stop people throwing things out. And the sun is sort of peering through the clouds, but I can tell you it's warm in this cable car. It's probably 30 degrees in here, so I'm getting a good roasting at the same time as looking down over the city. So then, walking from the cable car centre, and one of the first things that I've come across is a nod to the 1984 Winter Olympics, which were held here in Sarajevo, and so this sign commemorates that back in 1984, so 40 years ago, if my maths stack up correctly, 40 years ago to this year. And actually it was the first time that an Olympics was held in a socialist country back in 1984. And of course in 84, Bosnia and Herzegovina would have been part of the Yugoslavia. So interesting fact for you there. This place was part of the Winter Olympics 40 years ago. So the cable car ride takes about 15 minutes each way and cost around 30 Bosnian mark, which is about 13 British pounds. So answering the question of whether or not you can come to Sarajevo in Bosnia for less than it would cost you to go to London is looking like a quite possible yes. So after a lovely hour or so spent at the top of this mountain learning a little bit about the 1984 Winter Olympics, I'm descending now back into Sarajevo city and back into the smog, unfortunately. However, it is about 20-25 degrees and couldn't ask for any better weather, really, considering the time of year. So very nice to be back down on terra firma. Well, maybe I shouldn't jinx it. Actually, we've probably got another 5 minutes, 2-3 minutes until we get down the bottom, but I would highly recommend it. Well, I made it back down safely onto the ground here in Sarajevo, but I'm pleased to say that the cables cars that you actually ride in today are a lot nicer and more robust than this one, which would have been used during the 1984 Winter Olympics. You can see with this one that's just arriving now that they're a lot more modern, a lot more spacious, and frankly, a hell of a lot more sturdy, which for my money is a very good thing. Good evening. Now, after a wonderful day of walking around Sarajevo, seeing the old town, walking down the Marieka River and then going on the cable car ride, I'm back now in my apartment. As I mentioned earlier on, I'm currently trying to see if it's cheaper to come to Bosnia than it would be for me to go into London and spend the weekend there doing the tourist things. One of the ways that I've saved a bit of money is, instead of using one of the reputable hotel chains, I've instead rented this beautiful little apartment here right in the center of Sarajevo. And actually, if I were to throw you out the window in the nicest possible way, down there is the river, And down there is the centre of the city, so I'm in quite a nice quiet spot here, and this for 3 nights has cost me 100 quid, so about £33 a night. Very, very cheap, good value. And another way that I'm saving a bit of money this evening is by cooking, as opposed to either ordering food in or going out to a restaurant. And so what we have on the stove tonight is some chicken, and I'm just going to put the lid back on that so it retains its heat. And under here I'm sauteing some potatoes and some vegetables, because it's important to get your greens in. So tonight there's a little bit less Globetrot Colin and a little bit more Globe Cook Colin. So stay tuned for what I hope will be a 2 Michelin star experience. Will you join me as we are about to have the first bite of this meal, which is the Sarajevo cobbled together. And let's have a look. Have I managed to cook the potatoes? I mean, on this side, they're not. On that side, they are. So what I think that will be is that it will be perfectly cooked through the middle. Let's check it out. It's not. It's not. It's hard and starchy, but I won't die. So, you know, if we go with that as the baseline, then we're doing pretty well. Chicken is bob on. Look at that, absolutely fantastic. Let's have some of the cremated onions on top and taste that. Superb. Can't argue. And whilst cheaper than a restaurant, probably isn't quite as nice to look at, but never mind. Hello and good morning from a very sunny Sarajevo, where I have come to visit the war tunnel, so the Tunnel of Hope it's called. And during the Bosnian War, this was a critical tunnel used to transport medicine, supplies, but also to remove people from the besieged city of Sarajevo. So back in 92 to 96, this tunnel was specifically used for those purposes. So I'm going to go and have a look around, learn about the history, and just understand a little bit more about the history of Sarajevo. Let's go. All right, descending into the tunnel now. Okay, so the first thing that I notice, wow, it's extremely long. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but that is extremely long, and there's a railway track that runs along here, but then also right the way back down here. So if I start at the very beginning, there are some of the faces I expect on the wall of those involved in either the construction of it or saved as a result of it. Some faces from many years ago, I would expect. But there's lots of digging materials, and I'm sorry if it's quite dark, but lots of digging materials, pickaxes, planks of wood, etc. And what I expect, I mean, normally is the case with these sorts of railroads, is that all of the debris that's collected as you build the tunnel down there is brought back out this way. And actually, funnily enough, whilst I'm here, I can hear an aeroplane rumbling overhead. All right, so entering the tunnel itself now, which is extremely long. I don't think you can see the far end. I can, but it's in the very distance here. Now, it did say that this tunnel is over 800 meters long, and there's no joke about that. And it's just like if I stand up straight, I would hit my head just. So it's, you know, barely, you've got to crouch to get through here, but I would expect that this has been significantly upgraded since the time when it was first built. I would expect it would have been cold, wet, dark, dirty, hard work. And on top of that, you're coming under fire, both through snipers and shelling, whilst you're trying to build this and evacuate people and bring supplies in and bring medicine in. It beggars belief. Well, what I thought was the end of this tunnel is most certainly not the end of this tunnel. It is just a bend in the tunnel, and if I just pan around, you can get a bit of a scale for how far I've already come and how deathly quiet it is. Unless an aeroplane goes over our heads, in which case it would be quite noisy. let's press on and see what there is. So I've just got to the end of what I think is the first part of the tunnel, and there's some comms equipment here. It looks quite old-fashioned, so I imagine this is probably the original phone that would have been used to communicate up and down the tunnel, which of course was 800 meters long. And here we go, up another one. All right, I'm approaching what I think is daylight, so here we go, emerging from the tunnel. Now, what may have appeared to you as a benign walk through a wooden tunnel, back in the early 1990s, 1993 to 1996, would have been a vital route for people affected by the war in all sorts of ways. So requiring medicine, food, supplies, ammunition, but also as a means of escape. And so the tunnel itself is called the Tunnel of Hope for that very reason, because once you go in, you hope that when you come out the other side, you'll be a lot safer. Now, I don't speak Bosnian, but I'm pretty certain that it says danger of death. And that's because just behind here is a cordoned off area with signs saying that there's a minefield. So if I just come around slightly here, you can see there. So I won't be going any further than this. So on the wall here actually, and if I come in a little bit closer so that you don't get the sun glare, you can see a map of Sarajevo, and it says the Olympic City 1984, but the surrounded city 1992 to 95. 1,425 days under siege and 11,500 people killed. Wow. So what we can see here is that on pretty much all sides, you've got Serbian forces, Serbian forces, Serbian forces, and then Bosnian Free Territory up there. The airport is here, which is where we are right now, and you can see that the tunnel is 800 meters long and it went right the way under the airport. So it would be coming from this side, which would have been under severe threat from the Serbian forces on all sides. You can see these images of tanks, etc., no doubt guarding the airport as well, but then the tunnel which ran underneath, so it would have been at great risk to have attempted to cross through there. And here is an image of the tunnel after the war. So just as I was saying whilst I was in there, actually you can see that it's sort of, you know, waterlogged, and in many ways reminds me a little bit of images I've seen of trenches during the Second World War. Stark images here on the wall showing people going into the tunnel, which is a lot different than it is today, including casualties, as you can see here, on stretchers who are clearly wounded, having been fighting, to supplies, and then also here ammunition and supplies. So it would have been a vital route. Now, I by no means speak any Bosnian, but I can certainly work out what that means. Pazi sniper, watch out, sniper, caution, warning, sniper. And we can see here people running, and there are some famous videos online of the Bosnian War of people running through the streets in Sarajevo under fire from snipers who are just looking to take people out. And unfortunately there are images here of people who'd succumbed, I expect, to that sniper fire. But could you, I mean, in the world that we live in today, where 9 times out of 10 we're quite mollycoddled in our society, and actually the things that we tend to complain and worry about really are immaterial when you think about things like this, can you just put yourself in their shoes for a moment, particularly in the cold, dank months of winter where they're just constantly under threat as they go around their everyday life? It's shocking, and hopefully not to be repeated, although unfortunately around the world we see it today. And perhaps starkly as this picture shows, it seems to be in the human blood to enjoy conflict. When you look at the former Yugoslavia there, which obviously broke up, you know, come 1992, where you broke into independent states, and you've got Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is surrounded on all sides by different countries, Croatia, Serbia being the most prominent ones, and then Montenegro to the south. It's hardly a surprise, given the religious factions and the different cultural expectations and ways of living, that conflict would arise. It's just such a shame that it had to last for 4 years, and that there wasn't a diplomatic way out until in 1995, 1996, the Dayton Agreement was signed and brokered via the US. On this wall here is a comprehensive list of all of the 11,541 people that were killed, of which 1,601 were children. 329 shells on average fell on the city per day, and 1,425 days under siege. That's extraordinary to think. 4 years, 5 years of just living in constant fear if you were one of the lucky ones to live. I think that's got to be one of the lasting images, really. You know, seeing a mother carry her baby through the tunnel of hope to hopefully get away, either with this chap's help if he was on their side, or against the threat of sniper fire and artillery shells, etc. Purely, I imagine, to give her child the best shot at a decent life, or what might be known as a normal life, whatever that would mean considering they were at war for 4 years. Now this is interesting. This is a map of the airport at the time, and what we can see is where I am at the moment, which is roughly somewhere around here, which is the start of the tunnel, and I came along this road in a taxi earlier on, was dropped off here, and then I've been walking around, but you can see here marked in yellow where the tunnel went, right the way across the airport to the other side here. And if we again look at the map here, although it's been crossed out, what you can see is where the tunnel was, and effectively on all sides you've got Serbian forces, you've got Serbian forces up there. Clearly the airport is being guarded, but the tunnel itself ran under the runway to the other side, giving people a potential passage out of the conflict.
After a profound couple of hours at the Tunnel of Hope Museum, it was time to head back into town and to try out one of the local delicacies.
Now, I couldn't possibly have come to Bosnia and Herzegovina without coming back to the old town here in Sarajevo and tucking into some of the local delicacies, one of which is called a cevapi. I hope I've said that right, a cevapi. And here it is a grilled sausage meat wrapped in a beautiful pita bread with onions and chilies on the side. But I'm told that it's absolutely delicious, and it is a real part of Sarajevo's history, showing some of the Ottoman cooking styles. So let me try it out. Wow. That is amazing. I don't want to talk with my mouth full, but you can really taste garlic butter on this beautiful bread here, freshly cooked, and the onions with the sausage meat. It's absolutely spot on. Delicious. And to top it off, I'm in the sun.
So then, it's final conclusion time. At the beginning of this video, I asked the question, could I fly to Bosnia and have a good weekend for less than it would cost me to go to London and have a good weekend? Now, I did 3 nights in Sarajevo, and so I've assumed 3 nights in London. So what I've done is I've broken down the cost that I spent and then compared it like for like against what it would cost in London. So we had the train. I first of all needed to get the train to the airport. That cost me £52 to go to Sarajevo. To get to London, it would be slightly cheaper from where I live in the south of England at £46.24. So if I were just getting the train, then that would have been cheaper to go to London. Now, to get around London or to get around Sarajevo, I used a taxi to go to one of the sites. So that was £25, whereas for London, you would need to get a tube travel card, which costs £10 a day, so £30. Now, of course, I wouldn't need to fly to London, so the costs for the flights to Sarajevo were £108.14. This is where it gets more interesting, though. The apartment for 3 nights in central Sarajevo through Airbnb for a studio flat cost me £100.39. The same property in London near the centre would cost at least £280. So there's a significant difference in cost for the apartment there. Now, food shopping, I obviously stayed in an apartment, so I had my breakfast and my dinners in the apartment. They cost me £18.78 for the food shopping in Sarajevo versus roughly £30 were I to do the same in London. Now, to visit 3 tourist sites in Sarajevo, it cost me a total of £17.25. That was to go up the cable car, to visit the Tunnel of Hope, and then also to go across the Latin Bridge, which was free. In London, if I wanted to go on the London Eye, which is somewhat equivalent to the cable car, that would be £35. If I wanted to visit the Tower of London, that's another £34.95. And then if I wanted to visit the museums, I could do so for free. Now, the final area where there is a significant spend would be on food and drink out. In Sarajevo, the bits that you didn't see on the video was that I spent an extra roughly £20 on food and drink as I made my way around the city on foot. In London, for across 3 days, it would be at least £50. So that then brings us to the total. So the total spend that I had to visit Sarajevo for 3 days was £341.56 versus £506.04 to visit London. So to answer the question, can I go to Sarajevo for less than it costs to go to London? The answer is yes. £164, £48 less that I can spend on my next trip. And even better, I got to learn about a completely different city and country and culture as well. So I'll always say, take the trip abroad and go and visit some of the fantastic sites that Europe has to offer.